Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to FPL the Onion. We're coming to you not live, but from the UK, where it'll be sweet relief to talk about something relatively trivial for the next hour or so. This show is about Fantasy Premier League, and listening to it will make you better at FPL, guaranteed. If you think the offside rule is a sailing term, if you think XGI means someone who used to be in the American military, then this is the place for you. Shlee and I both played our wildcards in Gameweek 8 and went for similar-ish teams. The smart folks hung on until the international break, where a couple of injuries to key players means that we have some big decisions to make before Gameweek 9. Any questions, please put them in the comments below, and we will come back to you with our thoughts as soon as we can. How are things, Mr. Shlee? Are you regretting the wildcard yet?
Hey, Nick. Yes is the short answer. I am mega jealous of anyone that's able to hold it until game week 13 because I'm so focused on this game week 12 blank now. I'm kind of thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to navigate? And almost thinking, anyone on wildcard 9, make sure you plan maybe not. I did plan, but I feel like we've had quite a bit of bad luck here with injuries. But anyone that can save it till 13, I just feel that is so powerful now because and I did sort of look at the fixtures after, but they just seem so amazing now that I think I can't get to all these Arsenal, City and top 4 teams that have just got this amazing run. So anyway, maybe it'll force us into a certain sort of direction.
I hadn't thought too much about that. Obviously, the blank for Arsenal and City was kind of announced, I think, after I'd already wildcarded. But yeah, you're right. I think that you could dead end your team into 12 and then just kind of blast out of it with a wildcard and with those fixtures from 13 to 16. It is a short period though, isn't it? But I guess those fixtures are so good, you could just load up on all the best players. I'm hopeful that I can still get to most of them, but you're right. There's going to be some transfers and some jiggery pokery in there to try and do it. So
yeah, I was looking at the Onion League, which we'll come to in a minute. I think all of the top 6 wildcarded, and we all had pretty similar scores. And I was thinking, oh, okay, that's not too bad. But then I just popped into the work league a minute ago, and actually, I think the top 3 in that in my work league, didn't wildcard, and I think one of them was in like the 70s, maybe high 70s on one of them. People had Saliba and stuff with 15 points. So that Arsenal result was a bit annoying, and well, we were joking before we came on. It seems quite a long time ago thinking about these games, but I remember that blimmin' Friday night game with Forest and Fulham. I think you probably had like 2-3 players like I did, and that just went disastrously. High scoring, but not with any of the players that we wildcarded in. So a bit of a anticlimax I found, which is very similar to how it was last season for me. Wildcards don't normally go well for me.
No, I was feeling pretty good, kind of, I think by the Sunday, and then as you say, that Arsenal fixture, I think I'd kind of halved my rank, and then that Arsenal fixture kind of just doubled it straight back again. So I had a kind of small green, I think, but that I could really have done without an Arsenal clean sheet. I could really have done without Saliba doing what he did, and obviously Martinelli, who was the one Arsenal player I kept, didn't do anything for once. But
exactly. That 3-0 I think was a real shock, actually. I didn't expect that coming at all, but apparently Arsenal were class in that game. One of the few games I did just see the highlights today, and they did look pretty efficient and machine-like. So, pretty regretting only having Martinelli now. Although, their fixtures do stiffen up, of course.
Yeah, and can you imagine? You haven't owned Saliba, have you? I think you had Gabriel, didn't you? But
correct,
imagine if you had Saliba and you kind of wildcarded out of that team.
Yeah.
Oof, pain.
Unless you went Son.
Yeah. But again, I mean, that looks very hindsighty, isn't it? I mean, even kind of halfway through even in the game, it seemed hindsighty because I had people in this chat that I'm in kind of lamenting the fact that he wasn't starting, and they'd kind of taken a punt on him to kind of dead end before the wild card in the international break. And they were like, oh, he's not even starting. But a few people did say, oh, it's all right, he'll get a brace off the bench. And then he did. But obviously they would have been gutted. They would have been gutted with him not starting, but then to get the hat trick he did.
Yeah, no, exactly. I listened to quite a few stuff saying, like, if you knew he was going to be benched, you surely wouldn't captain him. And it's true, isn't it? That is crazy. But then shout out to Andy from our work league. He didn't wildcard and bought in Son just on a free transfer, just popped him in for Salah. Just like 19 points. Thanks very much. So, crazy swing.
Nice. And then the people who, obviously on Twitter, you see all the people who kind of screenshot the fact they captained him and stuff. But I just think they got incredibly lucky. I think to just bring him in like that, I think is fine. But to captain him, I think is too much. But, obviously the result was incredible. So,
yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, but yeah, it was funny. Yeah, we were talking before about we'll try and get some sense out of us tonight because I think we've both been thinking about our teams quite a lot. But actually, it feels ages since it is ages since we've recorded together. I think there's probably 2 or 3 we've missed. Where we've done individual ones or with other people, and
Yeah.
yeah, it feels quite a long time since there are actually games, even though it is only a week and a half. So we'll see how tonight goes, but hopefully quite a shortish one. On that subject, what's your guess for tonight?
I'm going to go for an hour and 5.
Nice. I will go an hour and 6 then.
And just for those listening as well, our league code, we'll keep plugging it, is TRLU7M.
Yep. And this is what the FPL the Onion League looks like currently. So yeah, as I said, the top 6 all wildcarded. So there's a range there from 58 to 67 points, which, given 6 wildcards, is pretty surprising they were that close. But I think there was a fairly strong template that most people went with. Did we 58 as well? Yeah. So that's quite interesting. That range is quite small. And then Craig in 7th didn't wildcard. He was on 49, but then Bogdan there in 8th, he did as well, so 62. So it really was that narrow range for those guys. But yeah, Raj Khan was still at the top. Congrats. He's doing pretty well. Mark Bleakley, he's 67, so he was the highest. The only difference I think with him was that he played Patterson. I had him on my bench annoyingly, so that's where that extra points came from. But yeah, no one went really crazy with Son or I mean one guy on Twitter, to FPL I know his Twitter handle, he went with a Formium. Should send you this on WhatsApp.
Yeah, I thought it looked really good.
It was pretty class, yeah. So Son, Kane, Haaland and De Bruyne, and enough money this week to do Son to Salah. So he must have kept quite a bit back as well. And I think he had Cancelo, but other than that, Gibbs, White and the likes of that. But he's sitting pretty. I think maybe he got like 70. It's not incredible, but pretty jealous of having those big hitters, as I say, especially after 13 when everyone's fixtures look pretty good for those guys.
Yeah, and I think it's the kind of thing that at the start of the season, I was looking at quite a lot of freemium drafts at the start, and I like the look of them, but it's you don't know who the good enablers are going to be at the start of the season. Whereas I guess at this point, you can have a pretty good idea about who's going to keep playing and who's very good value, and so it kind of becomes a bit more viable, doesn't it? After we've had quite a few game weeks, because you can be like, right, I know who the good 5.5 million mids are, I know who the good cheap defenders are, etc., etc. I mean, you are obviously going to be making massive compromises, but if you can get 4 premiums into your team and they are going to fly, then it might be worth it. I mean, everyone's got Haaland, haven't they? So it's almost like you've got 1 premium and most people are going to captain him. So a good differential is to get more of them in there, isn't it?
Yeah, and this week obviously it maybe looked great with 19, 10 and 10 from those non-Haaland premiums, but yeah, maybe next week will be a bit different, and it'll be Haalands and the Madisons and Zahas and stuff coming through, and obviously it's completely imbalanced, but interesting to see what happens there. Okay, so this is what happened to me last week. 61 on wildcard. I can't remember what I was before, but it's a small green arrow up to 366. I feel like maybe I was on 450k or something, so 366k. I made a note there though that my pre-wildcard team without any transfers would have got 60, mostly because of the Harrison Reed 10-pointer, which was pretty disgraceful. What was it, his 6th goal in 250 appearances or something ridiculous? So that was not good on that Friday night. Oh yeah, and the one thing I did actually do this week, which I haven't got a screen grab of, but I finally kind of figured out what those FPL optimized graphs are that, especially on above average FPL, they do, which was one of those sort of timelines of what is likely to happen for your team that week, which was quite useful, because when you were saying, on Saturday it was quite good, which is true, but that's because I think you and I had like 9 of our 11 players playing, and then obviously only 1 in the Arsenal game and whatever, and that did show that it would really drop off. So I was looking at my rank on Saturday thinking, this is going great, but I actually also realised it was going to nosedive on the Sunday, which it did. So I think I was like 150k or something after the Saturday when most of our players had played.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it was a pretty template wild card. But interestingly, I remember Rate My Team was sort of suggesting that sort of team compared to my old team was pretty similar in terms of points over the next few weeks. So and as it sort of has come to be, it was only 1 point difference between that and the wild card. But couldn't really have predicted Reed doing this thing. So really, I think there was maybe I only gained 10 points or something if you look at it like that.
Yeah.
And I think mine is probably more template than yours. Certainly things like Perisic was a pretty cool gamble that you went with, but didn't obviously pay off.
Which didn't pay off at all.
Yeah, but I do remember when you did it, and I was like, oh, you know what, that is a sensible move. Their fixture is great, and I was super fearing that Spurs game, and as it turned out, when they scored 6, it was right. But most of the points I suppose was followed up by Son. One thing I do remember that was really interesting was Seb on Scout. He did a really cool poll of it was like 15 questions almost on Twitter, a kind of, do you prefer this or do you prefer that? And it made their FPL community team that they run on the Scoutcast with Joe and Andy North, is it? And it was one player different to what I've got. I think they are Gay rather than Patterson, I think. So
Right.
I was like, I'm kind of on the right track with this, hopefully, as in sort of group theory kind of thinking.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was obviously Isak penalty was good. Maddison, I know you haven't got. He started off his tricky fixture and then his good run with a goal. That was a great goal. And annoyed obviously I benched Patterson rather than say Williams. But yeah, a bit of a bias that I thought that Forest Fulham game would just go perfectly. But the 3 players I had got a combined total of 4, so it's pretty annoying.
Yeah, I think with Nico Williams again, because he's a wing back, because he's attacking, and because Forest probably need to score 4 goals to draw a game at the moment, that you look at it and think, well, he could get an attacking return, which is probably why you were willing to kind of play 2 Fulham players up against him in that game. But and I know it always looks so obvious afterwards, but I just don't think we can rely. We just can't rely on that Forest defense at all. And yet Everton's defense, and I think we talked about it recently, but Everton's defense, obviously with the centre back pairing with Cody and Tarkowski, and obviously I think they've got the 2 sitting DMs as well.
Yeah.
Obviously Patterson's injured now, but it would have been lovely to have his points and then be able to bench him next week or make a decision on him. But yeah, those are the sorts of decisions I think. But we still see Everton and think, oh, they're going to concede or people are going to get after them. But I'm not going to be picking anybody against Everton, I don't think, in the next few weeks, because I think he has really sorted their defence out, hasn't
he? Yeah, I agree. I mean, well, that's interesting though, because that Spurs fixture in 11 everyone's talking about when it's Liverpool United. But I agree, it's not as easy fixture as it might seem. Yeah, I think Lampard is going pretty defence first, isn't he?
Yeah, and when he comes up against the likes of Spurs, even over the likes of West Ham, he's going to be even more so like that. So I think they could definitely frustrate the bigger teams. I'm not looking at. I think Liverpool have got Everton around that time as well. I think as well. I'm not looking at. I'm going to bring Salah back, captain him for that game. I might bring him back, but I probably won't captain him. But they got Everton around then.
No, Liverpool haven't. Tottenham have. Oh no, sorry. And then it's United next week maybe.
No, I can't remember who it was. It might be. Oh, it's Newcastle it might be Newcastle in 12. I can't remember why I was looking at it, but I think that Newcastle fixture's good.
Oh, as in it might be a banker for a clean sheet or 2.
Yeah, it might be it's going to be a very defensive game, but I just don't look at that Everton team and think that they're a walkover now. So
yeah,
I won't be targeting them.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we just check my notes here.
I think Maddison's a nice pick in there. I wish that I'd had Maddison now instead of, maybe I actually in a way wish I'd gone kind of 5 in midfield now. Obviously, it looks easy to say with Isak up top getting injured, but Maddison's fixtures look amazing now, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, you basically went Perisic as a 4th defender rather than Maddison as a 4th mid. That's kind of where your money went.
Well, I was kind of like, I've seen quite a lot of game week 8 wildcards without James sitting on the bench for obvious reasons. People are like, why would you bring him in and bench him, but or have him and bench him? But I just thought I'm definitely going to want him back in. That's why I'm not too upset with my wildcard. I can't remember what I would have scored if I hadn't wildcarded, but it was certainly a lot less than this. And I think that my wildcard, especially with like Zaha and James sitting there, it was more for the next few weeks rather than definitely for this one. I had a lot in reserve. But yeah, I mean, Perisic was really disappointing. It was a 1 week punt, really, unless he'd kind of gone absolutely mad. I think he is a little bit, I'm probably going to regret this, but I think he is a little bit of a troll. And I don't think I'll be kind of rushing to go back there, because apparently he was absolutely diabolical at right back, right wing back in that game. So I think he's a bit of a busted flush at the moment, Perisic. I mean, I'm sure he'll come good for them at some point in the season, but I don't think he's certainly not performing the way people expected him to. And even some of his returns where he's kind of got I think, did he get a 12 pointer in one game?
I was just checking that, yeah. And in my head, I've got him as a bit of a James kind of, really 1 point or 18 points, but it was only a 12. I know in that week, that was game week 3, it was a really low scoring week. So people who had him really sorted them out. But other than that, he's got a 6, and then it's everything 4 or less. So yeah. So minutes are a problem, aren't they?
Yeah, I will, and I absolutely will not be rushing back there. So my plan is Perisic out, probably to Trent.
So you got 2.5 mil in the bank, right? Yeah, it's quite a lot. You've kept back was it for that sort of move? You said Perisic for 1 week. It was
Perisic to Trent, and I don't think I'd quite planned it to be exact money, but like this week I could do Perisic to Trent and De Bruyne to Salah for exact money. Obviously I won't do that because De Bruyne's got Southampton, but I was thinking that could work out. But even just having a little bit of money, even after doing the Perisic to Trent move, just because it is so good to have that flexibility, isn't it? So
yeah.
And obviously with Isak, that's super frustrating, because I think that was the one thing that went really well on the wild card, was obviously the fact that he did get that return and the 3 bonus. But yeah, now he's injured. So
that sucks. At least though he did get a return and then get injured. Otherwise it would be troll territory. A bit like Patterson for me. Yeah, I'm just not going to get any of those points. But we got kind of lucky there.
Yeah, exactly. But as in, we're going to have to spend. I'm thinking now, especially if Mitrovic is also going to be out. Obviously, wait for news. But I saw a video today of him walking down the side of the pitch after the Serbia game with, a bare foot and ice on his ankle and a noticeable limp.
Yeah.
Again, I think don't read too much into it. If they can get the swelling down, he's the kind of player who they're definitely going to try and get back as soon as they can. So.
Actually, when Fulham's game is on the weekend, 3:00 on Saturday. So it's not going to be one where we're going to not get any news until after the deadline or something. Leicester Forest is the Monday game, so that might be a bit low on news. So yeah, we should know. But exactly, I think unfortunately we're going to have to swallow a few price drops and rises against us. Obviously, Tony went up last night as he just sort of WhatsApped and said Tony's gone up. And I was like, were you thinking about him? Have you just had a moan there or something this morning?
Thing is, the reason why I pinged you guys is because it kind of came out of the blue for me, because I hadn't really been checking prices, because when I had been checking prices at the start of the international break, nothing was happening at all. Like there were nights where no prices changed at all. And obviously, the narrative was that people were wildcarding in the international break to catch loads of price rises. But as we've said before, it just doesn't seem to happen anymore. And I think a lot of people just switch off now when there's that longer break. So they're not making loads of early transfers. And so it kind of came out of the blue, because I hadn't checked the night before. And if I had done, I don't know. I don't think I would have made the move necessarily.
It's
but
very early. Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah.
Although one person I think who did do it was off on, I think on Twitter this morning. He was saying he'd done it, and he's got quite a similar team to me. And I'm really torn of what to do this week. But it's funny, you listen to certain people and they're so forthright, and he's pretty conservative, and he's gone really early and caught that price rise. I think on the wire he was saying he was probably going to do it on Monday, and later I was like, we've only had the news about Isak for a few hours, you might change your mind. And he was like, yeah, maybe. And then actually no, he didn't. He just did Isak too.
I think the thing that does for me, or will do for me on that Isak, because I was quite happy to bench him next week, I think, because again, when you've got like Zaha and James to come off the bench, and Bailey, you never know whether he's going to start, but they've got a good fixture this week. But I can live with Isak on the bench this week. But if Mitrovic is also out, then it means that suddenly you're kind of getting deeper into your bench, and actually then the -4 makes more sense, because you're comparing, maybe you're playing Nico Williams when you could be playing Tony, or you could be playing Solanke or someone like that. So it does start, the -4 starts to make more sense.
Yeah.
And obviously I could keep Perisic for Arsenal, but again, for the reasons I've said, I just don't trust that guy at all now. And I think Trent being dropped from the England squad kind of a few months before the World Cup, I think is, if anything's going to kind of put a rocket up him, I think it'll be that.
Yeah. Spurs is the early game as well. Depending on what your Saturday morning plans are, I might get some team news, and if you can hold off until then, that might be useful for Perisic. Because if you knew he was going to start,
it's difficult to know though, isn't it, with the team news? Because obviously before they moved the deadline forward or back, or move the they moved the deadline. They put it 90 minutes before, didn't they? Instead, but you could get team news that was pretty reliable, like you were getting it from the journalists, but they've killed that now. So any team news you get, it's kind of, I feel like you almost need to ignore it because you don't know what the source is. And I think it's just as much to be kind of trolling team news than it is to be reliable.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, that Paul O'Keefe is pretty accurate on Spurs, and he got the Son thing right. But as in, you mean, people that didn't follow that and went for it, obviously they got a bit of luck, but that's the way it happens sometimes.
But he hasn't. That's the thing. I mean, that's not. I guess that's not what I'm saying, because you're right. People might have found that and then thought, right, well, I'm not picking Son, and then he gets a hat trick. But he hasn't been 100% correct, Paul O'Keefe. So he's not in the know. He just has. I think maybe he does know some people at the club, and yet maybe they're talking about kind of training. They're kind of picking up from training information and training formations, but he's not. He's definitely not 100% accurate.
Sure. Should we move on? Anything more to say on what we did?
No, I mean, I think I am pretty. I mean, I am, as you say. I think now, especially with the City Arsenal blank, it would have been nice to hold it off till 13. But I am actually, even with kind of Isak and Mitrovic's injuries, I do still feel like I'm pretty well. Like I did a little bit of planning this morning, and I'm still in pretty good shape. And I think I don't have to necessarily take hits. Although I might take one this week, but even for the blank and for the fixtures in 13, I still feel pretty well set up.
Okay, yeah, we'll come on to our rough plans there a bit later. One thing I did chuck in that I thought would be quite interesting to talk about just quickly was I found quite a few people on pods and stuff this week were saying, seem to be starting the season pretty well. Everyone's bunched up together. Managers, there's not much difference between 1 million and 500k. That part is certainly true, but I guess I'm always bringing this up to put a little bit of a rocket up myself and you, because at this point last season, after game week 8, you were 118k in the world. I was 197, and the average of the 12 people that we did on this end of season thing last year, average of 12 managers, myself and you, and then 10 other amazing managers far better than us. The average at that point was 172k, so we're pretty similar, but we're in the top 200k, and the average finish position in game week 38 for us was 28k for us and those 12 managers. So the fact that I'm 360k and you're 1.1 million makes me a bit scared that we need to get a move on. What do you think?
No, I completely agree. I mean, I don't feel like this season could feel any more different than last. I don't see, last season I kind of had these moments around this time where I was like, I'm going to get on this player, because I'd had a kind of failed wild card in the first. I think I've played it in game week 4, but most of the things I did in that wild card didn't work at all. But I don't even feel like I'm seeing the opportunity to find differentials who not many other people are thinking about.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's because that's just the way the game's going, or the squads are more settled or something. Or maybe I'm not seeing them. But last season there were opportunities to get on Reece James when people weren't on him. There was Conor Gallagher. There was Ronaldo to kind of keep faith with him when other people weren't going for him. So I don't really know. I don't know. It feels very strange, and maybe it's just because we're right in the thick of it. But I don't feel like it's going to be particularly easy to jump into like 300k or 4, even for me from 1 million. I don't feel like it's going to be a very easy jump from there. So I think one thing that will happen over the season, because I think it always does, is that you will get some people falling away. Like you'll get people who are just like, right, well, I'm not doing this much anymore. I think after this international break there'll be a lot less people who are involved. I mean, maybe not in the top 100k, but certainly in the top 1 million, there'll be people who are like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. But I think also the World Cup will be quite a big thing on that as well. I think that the people who are still engaged after the World Cup, so I'm not saying that, I'm hoping that my rank comes down just because everyone else has just stopped playing and I overtake them. But I do think there'll be a bit of that. But yeah, I mean, I've had a pretty horrendous start to the season, and there's certainly things that I could point to that have contributed to that. But yeah, there's no way I'm going to finish as high as I did last season. It's just not going to happen. So.
Although looking at this graph, that you did make a right move after game week 9, so it was around then that you did, yes. But I think Reece James was a big part of that, wasn't it? So maybe there is something about your style that gets going when everyone's back from international break. I mean, there's definitely games thick and fast, isn't there? There's midweek games coming up. A lot of people might get done by poor planning on game week 12, so maybe we can make some gains on that.
Yeah, but I think it's a shame, and this is why I think people have good seasons and then horrendous ones, is because now it's very tempting for me to look at my team and think, right, what's the logical transfer this week? Okay, it's that. I'm not doing that. I'm going to go for a player who no one else has got, and I'm going to get Morgan Gibbs White in, and then he gets 14 points next week. Like, as in it's. And yet the chances are that I do a strange transfer and it just nothing happens, right? And the player that I should have brought in gets more points because they're a better player. So I'm not seeing the same opportunities. I mean, you think last season, and maybe I was just incredibly lucky last season, but I had like Jacob Ramsey when he got, I think 12 or 13 points. It's those kind of players who no one else has, and they just absolutely propel you up the ranks. But the game week 8 wildcards, especially before Mitrovic and Isak got injured, or certainly before Mitrovic got injured, the game week 8 and game week 9 wildcards, I didn't regret moving in game week 8 at all, because I think they were very, very similar. But if everyone who wildcards in game week 8 and 9 has a very similar team, then it's going to be very, very difficult to gain any kind of ground. And then maybe the true moment of differential, or the true moment of kind of deviation, will be after the World Cup, when people coming back. But I think there'll be a very strong template that will form then, because there'll probably be a few injuries at the World Cup and players not coming back, etc. I mean, everyone's going to have Haaland and Salah because they're not going to the World Cup. So it's kind of 2 players locked straight in. And if Trent doesn't go either, even though I think that'd be mad, but everyone will have Trent too. So the ways in which you can really make a difference, I think it's going to be very challenging this season, I think.
Yeah, fair. Well, obviously it depends what their fixtures are like after the World Cup. I think Andy was saying that Arsenal's are particularly bad. So,
right.
But yeah, sure. Yeah, people that have a good rest, it's probably going to be a bit of a lock for those guys.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see like the anti-Salah from last season, where he went to AFCON and then when he came back was kind of a shadow of himself. Maybe this season he'll be champing at the bit after the World Cup and go absolutely bananas.
I do think one other thing though that was probably impossible for us to predict as a game week 8 wildcarder that game week 9 wildcarders will have an advantage on is, I think this week is going to be quite a turning point week. Is that Liverpool Brighton fixture could go either way, and we're going to get so much information about if Liverpool win 4-0 and Trent and Salah bang, it'll be such an obvious, we should have definitely had Liverpool coverage on the game week 8 wildcard. Or it could be, Liverpool are still crap, they're still faltering. Why would you spend all that money in, a penalty taker but 12.5 mil and Trent, waste of money. It's very difficult.
Yeah, and that's why I like the idea of just having one of them. I like the idea of having Trent, and I had, kind of my stall set on that anyway. But you think, I can't transfer out De Bruyne before Southampton.
That is next week though. I mean, you could hokey cokey, and that United game, okay. I mean, on my ticker, I think it's slightly better for City given Liverpool's in different form, but it's Derby. You'd think it would be tight, but true, yeah, that Southampton game is much better than Liverpool's next.
Yeah, but I quite like City against United as well. Although I'm not quite as bullish on that as a lot of other people are. I mean, I think United, especially now under Ten Hag, they're obviously going in the right direction. I don't think that's an easy game for City, that United game. So you're right. I think if the Liverpool game was anything other than, if it was an easier game than Brighton, because again they're an unknown quantity, aren't they?
Yeah.
And if the new manager, is it De Zerbi, if he sets them up the way Potter did, because he's like, well, I'm not going to try and imprint my stamp on this team, before Liverpool and Spurs. Maybe he'll start trying to do it against Brentford and Forest, etc. But maybe he'll also think, let me get to the World Cup and then I can kind of work on whoever's not going to the World Cup and start trying to implement different systems. But if he just tries to just change them straight to his system, they're going to be, this idea of playing it out from the back and inviting pressure.
Yeah.
Like you said, like Liverpool could absolutely destroy Brighton, couldn't they? But we just don't know. But I think if the Liverpool fixture was slightly easier, I think the hokey cokey actually would be quite a nice way to create a differential. But I just don't like the idea of spending transfers when I've got other fires in Isak and Mitrovic to go from De Bruyne to Salah. So
yeah, I think if Mitrovic is, and we're recording this Wednesday night, I don't think we've actually had anything concrete on Mitrovic. Have we? Just that video that I saw as well, and yeah, it was limping. But didn't he also give an interview saying he's probably going to be okay, and he was sort of laughing it off, saying it's just I'm a tough guy, I'll be okay.
I haven't seen that, but I do think he could be okay, because if he just turned his ankle and he's just got some swelling, then the swelling will come down and he might have a bit of pain. But if he's not going to exacerbate the injury by playing, whereas actually if they've scanned him and he's got ligament damage or a bone issue or something, like if he's got something that's going to get worse, you think they'll have to rest him, won't they? But no, I mean if Mitrovic is fine, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to just bench Isak this week
and do Trent in.
Yeah. Okay. Trent in.
But if Mitrovic was out, do you think that would sway you to Isak, because you'd have to?
Yeah.
You'd be scraping the barrel of getting 11 out type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be scraping the barrel to get 11 out. I'd be confident that I'd definitely get 11 out. It's just the quality just diminishes very, very quickly. Like if you're then playing Nico Williams or because even with Bailey at Villa, I do like their fixture, and I do think if he plays, he's a good option. But apparently, he was horrendous in their previous game, and you just don't know whether he's going to start. So it gets to that point where you're like, right, well, if I knew that he was a much stronger option, then I could probably still bench Isak, but there's just too much risk in it, I think.
Yeah. And are you almost definitely waiting until Friday to get this injury news? Because I think that's my thought at the moment. Yeah, it's going to be pretty important, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to wait.
Cool. Okay. Next up is what's going on in the top 10K. Quite a lot of interesting stuff here, given chips were played. So the top right suggests that of the top 10K, 8% played their wild card, nearer 9%, sorry, and the average was 61. So that was Bob on mine, pretty similar to yours, but no chip was 12 points less. So, I mean, on the face of it, that isn't a great wild card week, is it? 12 point immediate gain, maybe that's not too bad, but I know they.
I think that's great
as well.
I would take that. I just think obviously these. Did you say this is the top 10K?
Yeah. Sorry, I maybe said top 100K at the start. But yeah, top 10K for sure. This is Rackabolly stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with that, to be honest. Especially because, as I say, my wildcard's hopefully going to kick on in the next few weeks.
Yeah, but I think you said to me earlier in the game week you were about 12 points up or something, or maybe 15. So I think for you mentally, I think you did have a good one, as in your previous team was pretty bad.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Yeah,
I can't remember where the points were made up, but even just like Isak getting that 9, I think was huge.
Yeah. And a lot of content creators, people on Twitter, seem to captain Kane. I was a bit annoyed that I didn't spend a bit more time thinking about Spurs, how great that fixture was. But then I suppose they do have the inflexibility of it's going to be hard to get to a Salah or De Bruyne from having a premium striker. But obviously his 4 extra points with 5% captaincy was pretty nice swing.
But it's also, again, it's quite a lot of hindsight, isn't it? Because Haaland, again, I think he missed a couple of chances. In every game, he's a danger, isn't he? So it's the same kind of trap that we got into, you and I, Shlee, in the back end of last season, where you just do your risk going against Salah, and it's that one week where he absolutely smashes it and it drops you massively. But very, very brave, I think, to captain anyone against Haaland at the moment, or versus Haaland at the moment, I should say. But yeah, it paid off this week. Kane.
Yeah, true. Maybe, although I think only seen the highlights of the Spurs game, but I think Kane could have had 2 squared to him or something. He would have had a tap in when Son was shooting from range, so that could have been a lot worse. And I mean, although Haaland was playing against 10 men, they took their foot off the gas a little bit. So yeah, hard to predict all those things. But I don't know.
But Kane's had a brilliant start, hasn't he? When you just look at his points, I mean, he obviously hasn't done what Haaland's done, but if you'd had both, that would be the differential, wouldn't it? To have just had them both from the start. Yeah, I did have quite a few drafts at the start that had them both in as part of freemiums, but in the end, I just my freemium draft ideas were just kind of blinded by Son. But there'll be people who went for Kane, there'll be people who went for Son, and obviously they'll be in very, very different positions now, won't they?
Yeah. So Haaland was 186% captain in the top 10k, so that's pretty massive. Jesus being so highly owned still, that obviously hurt. I think we're pretty lucky for him only to get 6 actually as well. He had quite a few chances in that game.
I mean, look at that. He's owned by 99% of the top 10k.
Haaland is, yeah. Yeah.
That's absolutely mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he is literally it's just protection to have him in your team because he's not going to gain your rank, is he?
No, not a big amount. I mean, yeah, if you do captain and you've got 200 rather than 186, so bit of a gain there, but yeah, not massive at all. So
No.
just trying to pinpoint when not to captain him, I suppose. Speaking of which, what are your current Haaland thoughts and captaincy this week?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't taken it off him at all. I haven't thought about taking it off him. So that's the other thing about this season, right? As in last season, Salah was incredible at the start, but some people kept trying to go against him. It felt like a lot of people kept trying to go against him, and he just kept doing it. And I stuck with him. But this season, I think Haaland is just maybe if they rotate more. But I mean, I think they've started so well in the Champions League, and they've got two potentially easy games against Copenhagen that you think they should rest players for that rather than the league. But I don't know. I should probably be trying stuff. This is what I say. I think you start getting a little bit more impatient to try and climb the ranks, but I just want to make independently decent decisions. And so I think that I'm just going to keep captaining Haaland for now, I think, until there is a really good alternative to it.
Yeah, fair. I think this week is trickier than it has been. I didn't really think too much last week, and yeah, maybe hindsight on anything but Haaland. But away to Wolves, away game's not great this week. Obviously, home is good, but at the end of the day, United's a derby. They're not going to want to get spanked there.
No,
if Maguire plays, it could be anything. But Haaland's been talking about how much he can't wait to score against United, doesn't he? So yeah, I've got him on there at the moment. Partly as I don't have Salah, I think that would be a tempter, but on my ticker, as I've said, they're not the greatest of fixtures, either of them.
no.
And you've got the added thing of it being a derby. So I mean, Maddison there is the almost equal second with Salah captaincy poll result with Haaland way out in front. So I think Haaland's a safe pick, isn't it? And that would be the way to actually cheer on your captain rather than wanting to blank, which I never like. But
are you tempted? I think I would be tempted by Maddison, but again, it's funny because they've all got compromises, haven't they? I mean, Salah, again, if it was an easier fixture than Brighton, a kind of a knowingly easier fixture than Brighton, then I think it would be a good choice to go against Haaland, but I just think it's risky. But Maddison, obviously Leicester just, he got the return against Spurs, but they still got beat 6-2. So that Forest game could be very, very high scoring, couldn't it? Which could obviously be very good for Maddison. So that I like that. That could be a really exciting pick. I don't think I could bring myself to do it, but because Leicester are still not doing particularly well. But these fixtures, if anything's going to turn them around, and they've obviously, in inverted commas, kept faith with Rodgers, and so if anything will help them to turn it around, maybe it is that sudden realization from the squad that no matter how bad it gets, he's not going anywhere, so they might as well start trying to not get relegated.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's a really tricky one. But yeah, like you say, it could get even worse. Maybe that 6-2 was, maybe they get beat Plymouth 3-1, 4-1 or something. They can attack, but they just still cannot defend.
by Forest.
There. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I think if they were in any other position as a club, he'd be gone by now, wouldn't he? But I think they're in dire straits financially, but we're not kind of getting any information about it. I don't look at that Haaland United fixture and think it's going to be fantastic for him, but because I just think United are a very different animal than the one they were last season.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no real other alternative that you think this is an obvious shout.
Okay. Right. Yeah, partly think we could talk about our plans quite a bit because they probably are quite sensitive all the way up to game week 12 because we're obviously
This is my This is my old team, Shlee.
Oh, right, hang on. Let me try and sort that. Right, sorry about that. We're back. Go ahead, Nick.
Cool. Yeah, as we were paused, I was looking at my old team and thinking, I actually quite like the look of that, but I think that's always the way. Yeah, so as I said before, I think I am in pretty good shape. I'm glad to have Newcastle double up. Perisic is an easy sell, I think. I think I'll be doing that even if I make other moves elsewhere, unless we get some news that like Trent isn't available or something. But playing Zaha against Chelsea, I don't mind that too much. It's not amazing, and then his fixtures become brilliant after this week. Martinelli against Spurs isn't great either, but I just think with Bailey being a bit of a benching risk and apparently being pretty terrible in the last game, I still prefer Martinelli kind of trying to hit Spurs on the break, even though Spurs sit in super deep. Mitrovic could be a major issue, obviously, if he's out, because I've got Isak there, kind of third bench, because I don't expect him to be playing. And as I said, the first team looks really good, but if Mitrovic is out, then suddenly it's kind of Bailey or Nico Williams off the bench. Yeah. We've just talked about the fact that we think Forest are conceding in every single game this season. So I think if Mitrovic is definitely injured, I think I may take the -4 and do Isak to Solanke or Tony. And I think that's a really, really tough choice that we haven't really talked about. And I think a lot of people will be thinking about that with kind of injuries in their forward lines. Which way are you kind of currently leaning on the Solanke versus Tony thing, Shlee?
Tony, in short. I'll just switch over to this because I did have this up earlier. I just wanted to highlight some of the numbers. Everyone's been talking about Bournemouth. Their XG is pretty awful, and therefore Solanke's is. I think it's 3 times less than Tony's.
Really? Wow.
So this is on Scout members, and you can see the highlighted column with the sorting going on. So Tony is down here, 0.45 XG non-penalty per 90, and I think Solanke is 0.19 to go quite far down, 0.16. So it is a big difference. They're both on pen, so that is just going to add to them, but in the equal amount. But then you do save quite a lot of money. But I don't know. I think I'd almost be tempted more to go down to a 4.3 than Solanke and spread that and spend that elsewhere, because people are saying, at least at 5.7 you can bench Solanke, but I don't know, can you, especially with us without wildcards? That 1.4 mil is going to be pretty handy come game week 13.
But their fixtures are incredible if you just go to the ticker, because I think people have been a bit surprised by Bournemouth. I think they've outperformed where people thought. I think people thought they'd just get relegated straight away. I mean, obviously the fact they don't have a boss at the moment is quite difficult to judge them, but they've also got a decent fixture in game week 12 with the Arsenal City blank. So
3 out of the next 4 at home. Yeah, they've got 4.
So I couldn't. I think that's why it's always super useful to do that planning ahead, because if you look to game week 12 and you've got, I've got 3 City and Martinelli, you need to make sure that you're bringing in players who are going to play in game week 12 and have a good game. So if you bring in a bench forward, suddenly you're down to 10 men in game week 12 potentially, aren't you? So I think Solanke's certainly worth the cash there to make sure you've got a decent alternative in game week 12, unless you're thinking of taking out more City or more Arsenal before then. But as we've said, their fixtures get really good afterwards. But I think it is a tough choice, because with Solanke, you're just, literally the next 4 fixtures are really nice, I think, for any team. And he is on penalties for them. And if, he is their main man, and you think if he's,
if they score, he's 50% likely going to get involved or something, isn't he? His involvement's going to be high. Yeah.
But I think Tony is a much, much better player, but his fixtures are mixed, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're not unbelievable. And so it is really hard. And the thing for me about bringing in Tony, the price rise doesn't make too much of a difference to it. It's a bit annoying, but it does mean then that I would need to, if I want to get Salah in for game week 12, it does mean I have to make another transfer and find a bit more cash. Whereas obviously if Isak had stayed fit and kept playing, I could have just done De Bruyne to Salah in game week 12. But if I think you're right. I think Tony is definitely where I'm leaning as well. And I think I will. There's enough game weeks between now and game week 12 that I would be able to, without even taking a hit, I'd be able to find the money to bring Salah in. But the thing I don't like is the -4 this week. in order to get that Bournemouth fixture for Tony.
Yeah, fair. Just another couple of things on this. I mean, this is Solanke's stuff this season. It's going to be a bit hard to move up and down. Okay, it's not very easy to share. He's only actually had a return in one game. Game week 6 away at Forest, he got 12 points. Otherwise, he's blanked in all of them. So everyone's obviously remembering that one return. And yeah, great, a 10 plus return. But Tony's obviously had a 17 pointer, and I think he's got, I don't know, return in 3 weeks or something.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, the one thing obviously I heard on Planet FPL, I think it was last week, where they said that when they'd played 4 at the back and then played Mbeumo up with him, it just massively reduces his output.
Okay, I haven't listened to that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think they did it in the last game, and I think they may have changed halfway through the game. I can't remember why. Maybe I think they might have had an injury in the defense or something. But it's what they're saying is you don't know whether they're going to play 4 at the back or 5 at the back. It will depend on probably who they're coming up against. And so if you've got Tony and suddenly they go through a run of games of playing 4 at the back, then he's just not going to be as effective. But yeah, that hat trick is, that incredible hat trick's kind of fresh in everyone's minds.
Yeah.
But as we know from last season, possibly because of the formation changes, he can go long periods without doing anything. So
yeah, I was just looking as well with his scores, whether there's a bias to home or away. So he returned in the first 3 game weeks. One was away at Leicester, one was at home at United, and one was away at Fulham. And then he had that crazy one at Leeds at home. So he has had a 50-50 balance, returning in 2 home games, 2 away games. So that's good. But that's interesting if they do have a kind of formation switch in them. Because you say this week is good, but then Newcastle away, not easy. Brighton, the new Brighton, that could be anything. Chelsea, they're still finding their feet. They could both be good games, but they could both be tough ones. So yeah. I don't love any of the options. That's why, I mean, on your back to your team, you've sort of summarised it as Tony or Solanke, and on mine, I've also put a 4.3 in there because I do think that it's not a great option this week, obviously, if Mitro's out, but saving that money for later could be quite handy as well, because I know a couple of weeks ago,
how would you
3 strikers, but I don't know now.
How would you then navigate 12 though if you had a dead spot?
Yeah, true. I would have to then really focus everything on making sure I had players for 12, or just accept going with 10. It's not a great solution for sure.
I mean, I guess the thing is, it's Haaland, isn't it? Because it's quite easy, especially if you've banked, nearly 3 million from going down from Isak down to a 4-3. It's very easy to go Cancelo, Trent, and then De Bruyne, Salah, but you're not getting rid of Haaland, are you? Because then you'd be losing all that money, and you're going to need him back. So that's the only issue, isn't it? It'd be nice to be able to just burn up a bench spot, but unfortunately, because of that blank, it doesn't really feel like we can do it at the moment.
Yeah, and I've got a feeling that if I did that 4.3 striker, that I couldn't get Trent and Salah by about 0.3 mil already. So those prices are only going to go one way. So although it sounds great, and you think, oh, that will be the key to unlocking the double Liverpool if you wanted it, I don't actually think I can afford that either. So
right,
yeah, but as late riders are sort of saying with this, great to do a lot of planning and try and forward plan it as much as you can. You don't know what's going to happen. Maybe Salah and Trent are not going to be options whatsoever. Maybe they're going to flop against Brighton, and then those 2 fixtures, they're tough. No one's going to be probably bringing them in for Arsenal away, City at home.
True, but I think it's fine to have a plan, but know that you need to be flexible. I think the alternative is if you don't have a plan, and then they are fantastic options for 12, and you obviously know that the City Arsenal game isn't happening, so that's a blank for them. If you can't get to Trent and or Salah, and you're left with only 10 players, then that's because you didn't plan it out, I guess, isn't it? So
yeah, true. Yeah, and there's also hits as well. Obviously, I'm trying to get 11 out in game week 12 with no hits, but might need to take one, especially in 12. I think when I come to my sort of team and my rough plan, I almost need to roll transfers the next 3 weeks and then spend about 5 transfers in game week 12, which obviously cannot be done. But there's such a big swing around there that I know I've got a decent team set up now, but I actually need to start thinking about 12, which I don't know, does that slightly scream of you shouldn't focus what's in front of you 3 games ahead. You should try and jump on the opportunities now, as you've kind of alluded to. But I feel we've got those.
I haven't looked too far outside of Solanke or Tony just because I think they are the best options. But if there is a forward who is at least playing every week, who's less than Solanke and has a, at least has a fixture in 12, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't
I
know.
don't think there are any. I
I
mean,
don't think there
Daka is
are
similar
either.
price, but he's not nailed. I'd like that as a punt, but my team has enough injuries to not go punty, I think.
Who's that? Sorry.
Bamford's Daka at Leicester.
Yeah.
Bamford's more expensive. He'd be punty, but I don't think that would work.
But Leicester have, I mean, that's the kind of thing where I'd almost be more willing to take a risk on it. But if he's around the same price as, and Solanke has amazing fixtures, and Solanke has a good game week 12, it just seems like a bit of a no-brainer, doesn't it? And he's on penalties.
Fair, yeah.
Like if Daka was playing every single week for Leicester, was the main man and was on pens, he'd be like, oh yeah, let's all get him in. Yeah. I don't know. Kind of talking myself into Solanke now, but I don't need the money quite as desperately. But it's always nice to have like $1 million in the bank with the moves you want to make, because then you don't have to jump on price rises. You don't have to stress about it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely an opportunity for him to make a bit of a hero for himself here. And as you say, those fixtures are incredible. And yeah, Bournemouth haven't. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the ticker. Haven't been great, but then you could say they've had quite tricky fixtures. They've got this great run coming up. I think they've had one of the worst starts. Just trying to think who they played recently. I mean, yeah, Forest was in there when he got his return. Newcastle, Wolves, Liverpool, and then well, from game weeks 2 to 4, they had City, Arsenal, and Liverpool all in a row. Solanke didn't actually play any of that apart from 45 minutes.
And then this was the thing about my planning and about my would have been very, very happy to have Isak on the bench this week if Mitrovic isn't injured. Is that I don't want to take that -4 to bring Solanke in, because I'm not hugely confident he does anything against Brentford. But I do like Leicester, whose defense is horrendous, and they've got arguably one of the worst goalkeepers to just continually start in the Premier League. In fact, he certainly conceded the most goals in the first 8 game weeks of a season than anyone else has before. But I wanted to do Isak to Solanke next week, because you look at this week. I was looking at Fulham away when I wildcarded and thought that looks fine, and then I could go to Solanke next week. So if Mitrovic is fit, that's probably what I'll still do. I'll just do Isak to Solanke next week for the Leicester, Fulham, and then Southampton games.
Yeah, although you would have kept Isak for Brentford, wouldn't you, next week?
No, because I really like that Leicester fixture for Solanke. So I mean that was the original plan, was to just have Isak for, I can't remember who they had last week, but I quite like the Fulham fixture, because the other thing was I knew Callum Wilson was coming back as well. So
yeah.
That was the plan.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. What about playing Everson? We've got the same 2 keepers, and I've got Everson starting at the moment, just a non-double up on the Fulham game, which I think could screw us.
Well, because you think that just he might finally come into the team.
Yeah, and if he doesn't,
but
he's very unlikely to come
Forest, on. I think Forest will score.
Yeah, okay.
And the thing is, I think this is the other thing that's made me feel relatively happy about my wildcard, because I think it isn't going to be too different from a game week 9 wildcard. Everything that I listened to The Wire on Monday night. I thought that was really good.
Yep.
They were talking up Pope. They spent ages talking about Pope and potential alternatives. And Praz was kind of trying to, because he's on wildcard, was trying to think of like anybody that you could get instead of Pope. But as they were saying, like Pope is almost like the Pope from Burnley, but on speed. Like, as in he's still inviting shot. They're still inviting shots from distance, so he's getting a lot of shots and recoveries. But he's in a better defense. And the team's just going to keep improving, obviously, with all the cash that they'll probably spend a load of money in January as well. They've got good fixtures. And I guess the biggest thing now is, is he 5'3" now, Pope?
I'm not sure.
They're kind of saying he's getting towards like Edison and Allison territory. But
yes, true.
I'm delighted to have Pope. So the idea of just putting Everson in, just because I know what you mean. It's because you think, oh, he's actually a sub keeper. He's 4 million, and he might be just about to win his place in the side. But that Leicester defense is they're terrible.
Yeah, fair. But if Everson's in it, maybe they wouldn't be terrible. Maybe Ward is that key that I haven't got a clue about Everson, and I think half the community call him an Iverson, which I've now doubted myself. But I just keep thinking of Stefan Everson from Spurs in the 90s. Maybe he's going to sort them all out.
Wasn't there a keeper who played for Barcelona? Was it Barcelona? Was he like this Sweden keeper, and he like saved a few penalties in a European Championships or something? And was he called Everson?
Oh,
I thought it
blimey.
might have been him, but anyway, he doesn't have any Premier League pedigree. I think the idea that he comes in for Ward and then suddenly he's the saviour of Leicester, I think it's not very likely. But
Yeah, fair enough.
what's wrong with Fulham away? Just the fact that they've got Mitrovic and Andreas and
Yeah, a little bit.
doing
It's
pretty
the
well.
matchup against two in your team. I'll probably be starting Andreas. So and you've already got Trippier. I think if I didn't have Trippier for sure, but doubling up, maybe because it didn't work last week. Obviously, if they clean sheet, great. But yeah, spreading that risk a little bit.
I guess so. I just think if you put Everson in, the chances are that you get Pope off the bench anyway because
Yeah,
Everson's not
fine.
going to play. But you might be right. Might be worth the risk. But
I think I did
again,
have.
I think that's sometimes the issue with keepers, isn't it? We don't play them in games because we overthink it to a certain extent. Whereas Pope's just a good keeper, so you just play him and you'll get the odd clean sheet that you don't expect, and you'll get the odd loss of a clean sheet that you didn't expect as well. Right? I don't think any of us expected them to concede against Bournemouth, did we? But
no, absolutely. Are you not tempted at all to roll? If Mitrovic is fit,
no,
you still wouldn't
no.
roll. Okay.
No, I'm not tempted to roll because I've got that 2.5 in the bank, and so I want to kind of deploy some of that. And I just think, yes, Perisic could do fine against Arsenal, but I think Trent against Brighton is a good hedge against people who will have Trent and Salah against Brighton. And I think that I'm probably a bit more confident that whichever Brighton turns up, either the good new Brighton, the kind of more attacking Brighton who are still trying to figure out how that system works, or if he just sets them up in the old way, I'm quite confident I'm more confident of a Liverpool clean sheet. So I'm happy to make the free transfer. My free transfer will definitely be Perisic to Trent, and it's just whether I make another one.
Okay. Should we just quickly talk about Gameweek 9 wildcards? Before we go on to my team, how it would differ from what we've got here. Madison would probably be in because they got the great run, so he'd probably come in for Bailey. You'd have to free up some money there, though. You probably wouldn't have Perisic.
Well, I don't think you could bring him in for Bailey, could you? I think you'd have to. I think probably would you not have Perisic be maybe like a Gray or someone like that, and then upgrade. Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? You're not going to lose Andreas, and so maybe you don't have Zaha, or maybe you don't have Martinelli. Maybe that's it.
Maybe it's Martinelli. Yeah, but that is obviously a bit of a value drop that is going to be a bit tricky to swallow. And they've got Leeds in 11, haven't they? So it's not like they're all hard until then. And 2 home games, they're flying in the league. That might be crazy to get rid.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite set on my wild card to not have Martinelli, and then I listened, and he was one of those that I didn't take out because obviously I knew that if I wanted him, I'd lose value putting him back in, which would be a bit of a schoolboy error. But so I kept him, and I listened to a few things where they were just talking Martinelli up massively as an option and as brilliant in that price bracket. So the Gameweek 9 wildcarders have got that same choice, but I feel like I have seen more people, maybe because he blanked in the last game.
Yeah.
But I've seen more people saying they're going to take him out, but they have got tough fixtures. But I do think they're going to try and hit teams on the break, aren't they? So obviously the biggest thing in that Spurs Arsenal game will be who scores first, won't it? Because the other team will have to come out then.
Yeah. And then if Mitrovic is fit, I think the strike force, 2 of them pick themselves, and it's just who do you go with the third one? Probably most would go Solanke, and then that gives you the money to do the bits that we've been talking about. That probably allows you to have a Salah or a Trent or both.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's massively different. I think maybe you have Trent on wildcard. And I think quite a lot of people I think are going without Cancelo, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think there's quite a few teams. And then I think the other big one, I think Andy, I haven't seen it yet, but I think Andy may have done a video today about not just on this, but talking people out of Trippier, like saying that he wouldn't go for Trippier on wildcard now because he sees them. I actually tend to agree. It's funny. I was just talking Pope up, but if you look at Newcastle's fixtures, I do actually think they will concede in most of these next kind of 5 games. But I also think that they'll surprise you. Like they might get a clean sheet away at United, and then
That'd be so annoying if that's the case. Like I just saw the highlights earlier. He hit a post, I think, in that Plymouth Newcastle Bournemouth game. Like he's been so good, and I know scoring, what was it, 3 out of 4 free kicks he's had this season is not sustainable. But it'd be so frustrating now with these good fixtures. People have got him in, and he doesn't do it. But yeah,
No, but I do think again, I think that's why I'm quite pleased to have done the wildcard in Game Week 8, because people who wildcard in Game Week 9 will just have to, they'll be thinking of ways to differentiate themselves from Game Week 8 wildcards, and they might move off players or not have players that I actually think are still good picks over the next 5 or 6 weeks. So I'm pleased to have Trippier and Pope, but I think there are going to be people who are thinking, right, well, I'll have Guaita and somebody else, Perisic.
Yeah. And on goalkeeper, sorry, you would still go for Pope. He is 5.2, by the way, still.
Yeah, it's really difficult because that was the other reason why I wildcarded in 8 is that the prices are rising. I think I got Pope at 5-1 at the start of that week. So yeah, I don't know if he was 5-3. It depends what you're looking at. What are the margin calls elsewhere? But there are people who are still considering going for Ward and Everson, aren't there?
Yeah. No, I think Praz did sum it up quite well on the wire that it's a really tough position to do to figure out what the best move is. He was talking about Alisson potentially, but yeah, and then also Andy's talking up Ward and Everson. I can see it both. I think like they were saying, you pick your team and then you see how much you've got left.
Yeah.
And if you've only got enough for Ward and Everson, fine. But if you've got a bit, you maybe upgrade a little bit.
Yeah, I mean their fixtures are amazing. So Leicester's fixtures, I mean, so it does make sense. It's just their defense has been so horrendous. And those teams that they're playing, yes, okay, they're not going to necessarily be top half teams, but they can attack. Teams tend to kind of get relegated because their defenses are horrendous, don't they? And the team that finishes bottom tends to have a terrible defense and an attack. But most of the other teams who are in the mix, they can score, they just can't defend. So I still think Leicester concede in most of those games.
Yeah, you're probably right. Okay, I'm looking at this. So my starting 11 is the same as yours, except I've got Maddison instead of Perisic. Is that the only difference?
Yeah, I think that is the only difference. Yeah.
Okay. So I am so torn what to do. Tony and Solanke, if I have to go with one of those, I feel I'm going to get that the wrong way round, but that is probably the thing I would do. The thing I got to be a bit careful of that I really did annoy myself with a few weeks ago was that I rolled a transfer and then didn't think about what I would potentially do the next week. And I feel a little bit like that I could roll this, and rightly the two Toms on WhatsApp earlier were saying, well, more value potentially in 2 transfers next week. But I have quite a good team for next week, probably better than this one. And it's not easy to see a move then either. And okay, I'm probably gonna have to deal with Patterson and Isak if I did roll, but is it not better to do that now? Maybe there'll be a bit of price changes in my favour if I did it now. So I can see myself probably getting rid of Isak, but the thing I don't like about that is that if it is for Solanke or Tony, I'd almost have to play one of those two, and I'd be benching Andreas, and I do quite like that Newcastle home fixture. So I wouldn't potentially want to make a transfer and then bench someone who's going to get a return. And Andreas has been much better at home than away.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the kind of thing, isn't it? So first question is, Patterson and Isak, have they both gone up by 0.1 since you brought them in?
Isak, yes, but I think he's soon going to drop. Patterson, I'm not sure.
Because I don't think Isak will double drop before the weekend. He might.
No,
he
I
might
don't think he would,
drop.
but I would obviously want to wait for next weekend for extra info, so he could drop in the middle of next week.
Yeah, I actually think he's probably likely to drop, especially if Solanke or Tony scores on the weekend. He's probably likely to drop on like the Sunday night or the Monday night.
Yeah.
As people move to him, if one of those looks like they're going to rise again.
Because I do think 0.1 and he's on -23 at the moment on statistics.
Right.
And Patterson hasn't gone up since I've had him. He's 4.1 and he's on 6.9 positive and dropping, quite fast.
So he will drop. So I wonder whether your move this week is just whichever one looks more likely to drop. But then I don't know. I mean, Patterson obviously so cheap anyway that
Exactly. Where do you go? I do have a mill, but I don't particularly want to use that in anything. That's why if I did have 10 in game week 12, that Patterson might just be there on the bench, and I'd just accept that, yeah, I don't have 11, but I would have only had a 4 mil playing defender anyway. So what would I get? 1 or 2 points.
some pretty great options though, aren't there? I mean, next week you could have one of the Palace defenders.
True, yeah.
They've got
Yeah.
a really good run coming up.
Yeah, what do they have in 12? Wolves at home. Okay, yeah, good. I mean, Mings at Villa is interesting. We can fill them away. That's maybe not the best. They're 20th on my ticker as well, so I suggest their XGC has been terrible. But yeah, true. But it's just making that punt now, like a 4.3 mil that far out. I feel, in a way, slightly other injuries could happen, and well, I suppose I'm obviously dealing with them now. But classic would be to bring in Mings or
I think Gay.
Gay
I think
might be
Gay
or
is.
something.
I think Gay is a really good option. But you're right. It's not super exciting. It's just that, and I guess if you're happy to eat a couple of price drops, or even maybe just one on these two, but you could definitely do that next week and just keep 2 free transfers. I think I would just be keeping a really close eye on the prices and just see, because I don't think you have to play, especially if you bring in, say, Solanke. I don't think you have to play him. I think you just put him first bench, and you know that he's a much stronger first bench than Nico Williams, and then he's got good fixtures after that. But you're right. I mean, I think if Mitra, what are you going to do if Mitra Fitch out? Definitely do like a Solanke move and play him.
Yeah. I think that would almost be a bit of a blessing because I'm obsessing about Andreas, but yeah, that means my benching headache goes away. But I think that depends on the duration, right? I mean, if Mitrovic is out for 2 months or something, he'd have to go probably first.
Yeah, true.
For a few weeks, then that'd be okay.
True.
I mean, it's interesting you say about Zaha because his fixture's obviously not the best, and I think I did get swept up a little bit by the Twitter chat on him because his fixtures are from next week great. But a lot of people were talking as if Chelsea was a good fixture. Are you at all tempted to? I mean, you could do Zaha to Madison. I know that sounds crazy, but
no, not. This is the thing, you see, because there's been the world has changed and FPL has changed a lot since we wildcarded, hasn't it? I mean, Chelsea, I think, still had Thomas Tuchel when we hit the button on our wildcards, or maybe we just did it after. But I don't think they didn't have Potter in play anyway. But you just know with Zaha, he can do it in any game. In fact, he's probably more likely. The reason why he's a bit of a troll is because he does well in the games where they're counterattacking, where they're not expected to do well, and he actually doesn't do quite so well. He's like Rashford; he doesn't do very well when the team he's playing are kind of sitting in. So,
yeah,
I actually don't mind him for that Chelsea game, but it's a bit like with Brighton. It's the opposite, obviously, because the manager's gone from there to there, but we just don't know what we're going to get with Chelsea, do we? Or Chelsea's defense. We have no idea what they're going to look like.
Yeah, maybe. If you don't have them, don't buy them. But if you've got them, don't move them. Just keep what you got.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, for Leicester, those fixtures are so good, and Maddison's obviously a very good. He's done pretty well already this season, but I wouldn't move from Zaha to Maddison.
Yeah, fair. And the only other thing on my mind is at the top of their potential transfers I've listed there is doing De Bruyne to Salah. I mean, Late Riser was really bullish on getting Salah in and captaining him for a hit, but he's pretty maverick, so I don't think I'd captain him. But doing that little bit of cover for, and then Tom Martin was making an interesting point on maybe EO drives that move, but I think they're really close on most of the percentages. I think in the top 10k it's one way. I think Salah's maybe 2% ahead, but I think overall in the game it's De Bruyne that's 2% ahead or something. So
you are going to want De Bruyne back though for that Southampton game. So are you really going to, because you're basically either blocking off all other transfers, taking price drops on Patterson and Isak, or you're basically spending a -8 to do the hokey cokey, aren't you?
True, but then wildcard niners aren't going to have De Bruyne to Southampton. They're going to be bringing that.
That's true. I mean, so wildcarders, that's the thing. They could have Salah and then make the move, and obviously they won't have any other fires this week because they'll be wildcarding, and then they can just book that transfer in. But I mean, De Bruyne could get a couple of assists against United, even if United win 3-2. So I don't hate having De Bruyne in that fixture. I certainly wouldn't spend a -4 to do De Bruyne to Salah because
no. No, I've got the money to do it for free, so it wouldn't be for -4. But like you say, I think if Isak hadn't happened, could have been on the cards. But that is a big fire I've got, and with Patterson, seems a bit crazy to take that bench forward. So yeah, it'll probably be Isak.
I would have loved to have been sat here, Shlee, with you seriously contemplating just going De Bruyne to Salah for 1 week, because it doesn't seem like the kind of move that you would necessarily make. But
I think last season around this time I did do hokey cokey, or maybe it was the season before. I remember going from Fernandez to like Son and back to someone else, and it was a nightmare for price changes because it really hurts your value doing that. I think I was definitely up on the deal. I think maybe I did it for a hit a couple of times, and
I think you did it around. I think you did it at a similar time to me, didn't you? Around game week like 23 or 24, and we definitely we as you say, we like stopped off with Fernandez for a double in between, and then we jumped back somewhere else. But
yeah, I think maybe it was the season before as well where it did work. But yeah, I think when you're carrying this bench, maybe it's not a good idea. And it's not as if the swings are really obvious. And like you say, that City game, okay, they got Copenhagen, but I think all the chat is that he's going to play in that game.
we can't rest
now.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because when the narrative starts to be like, well, City they're doing really well and they've got Copenhagen, but you can't rest the entire first team. So some of them are going to have to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking at your team, you've actually been really unlucky, haven't you? For the week after wildcard to have 2 players kind of with relatively long-term injuries, like at least 2 or 3 weeks out. I think Patterson will be out for longer than that, but that's pretty unlucky to go from what was a solid bench to not a lot there.
Yeah. It was. A few bits I noted down that we should chat about, but I think we haven't chatted about wildcard 13 plans. I mean, that's a bit far away, but I think we've covered the kind of jealousy we have of that, and you can obviously dead end, and then you can really attack those post 13 fixtures.
Yeah,
the Derby we've kind of chatted about. Like you say, they're going to play out from the back slowly and invite pressure apparently, and then really turn it on when they get through the press, which Liverpool are very good at. So it could be blimmin' 3-0 Liverpool in that, or it could be 1-1.
I think it would be irresponsible of him to just try and completely change the team from. I remember when Louis van Gaal came in at United, and he basically just said to all the players, "Forget whatever you understand from football before. This is the way you must play it. All that kind of consciously capable and all that sort of stuff." And then I don't think they ever got to consciously capable, never mind unconsciously capable. But I think if he tries to imprint himself on that team, they'll get absolutely destroyed by Liverpool. I think Liverpool they need to turn a corner. They have not had a good start. Obviously, Trent not being in the World Cup squad at the moment is pretty horrendous for him. Salah, I think, got a couple of goals for Egypt, certainly in the first game. So maybe he's going to come back into a bit of form. But it's just this Brighton fixture. And then after that, their fixtures they're not great, are they, until 13? So, or until 12? Who have they got in 12?
West Ham and Anfield.
That's it. Fine. So I don't know. I do think Liverpool are going to come good. They're too good not to have done. And but we just don't know, do we, with Brighton? So I think I'm just going to go for Trent and not just avoid Salah and hope he doesn't go absolutely mad.
Fair enough.
And then we have chatted about the big hitter, hokey cokey, but yeah, I'd love to see you do that, actually.
Just end up with 9 players in game week 12, but it'll be worth it for the 3 points I gain over the next few weeks.
Exactly.
Okay, I think we're there. Anything else you want to discuss?
No, you got me on the time again. It's always it's good to get under an hour and a half, but the under the hour when there's the 2 of us on here still eludes us, I think. Have we ever done that under an hour?
No, I don't think so. No. But yeah, relatively short. But yeah, it's good on a Wednesday, I suppose, and it's a Saturday deadline, so we've got a bit of time. But I've certainly, last night I was doing quite a lot of FPL team super planning, trying to think, right, I've got to do this here and that there, and I didn't get the magic combo, so I do need to try and get that in terms of obviously pre-injury news, and try and get that Salah and Trent coming in at the right time. I think the only way actually I could probably do it is by selling Cancelo or De Bruyne in 12 for a Liverpool asset, but obviously my ideal would be to keep Cancelo and still be able to do it. I don't mind losing De Bruyne, but there's quite so many combinations of that, isn't there? And obviously, you'd rather
But
keep Martinelli with his value tied up.
yeah, the one thing I haven't looked at, I did a little bit of planning last night as well, and that's where I kind of had these plans for Game Week 12. I had one plan where I brought in Tony and Trent this week, and then I think like Salah next week or something. But it was literally, I think it involved like Bailey down to a 4.4 or a 4.3 at some point, and it was like 0-0 in the bank, but like
Yeah,
four game weeks out, and it's like this is never going to happen. So why am I even stressing myself out with it? But which is again probably why I'm like leaning towards Solanke as well. But yeah, the one plan I haven't done, I don't know whether it's even possible, but I do love the idea of in game week 13 looking at my team and having like Haaland, Salah, and De Bruyne as a differential. But I just think you'd have to you'd basically have to go without Cancelo and Trent probably to get to that.
yeah. And to do that without wildcard as well, that would be some serious bold like downgrades and then a sudden upgrade or something. Or you'd
Well, I
have
think
to
the
take a
biggest thing would
-4
probably
or something.
be, I'd have to check, but I think the biggest thing would probably be just going Cancelo down to a good, maybe a Crystal Palace defender or something for that run. But then you're
Right.
no Trent, no Cancelo. Whereas actually, and we haven't talked about this, but a lot of people are looking at Foden as an alternative to
Yeah, true.
De Bruyne,
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
think could be nice.
yeah, exactly. Rather than freemium from 13. I mean, it's still expensive to do this, but Diaz or Foden or both, and maybe a Saka or but that's not including any Spurs as well. But if it's not Son or Kane, you're really going to get a Kulu or a Richarlison? Probably not.
Yeah, and I don't think Spurs' fixtures, I'm not quite as excited about Spurs' fixtures, really. I mean, I think obviously Leeds before Bournemouth away and then Leeds before the international break. I mean, the game week 16 is going to come around really, really fast. Like obviously game week 13 wildcard looks great, but it's only 4 game weeks until the
True.
World Cup.
Yeah.
So
But if it allows you to go 3-mium or 4-mium or something stupid, and for that short period, that could work quite well. But yeah, true.
yeah, and that's the other thing, because even if it doesn't work out, you're then just unlimited transfers kind of to a more sensible team after the World Cup. So
Yeah. I mean, if Leicester are still dire, then those City fixtures are immense. They got 3 at home and then Leicester in there.
yeah.
Yeah,
And that's the
Haaland
thing, and that's
Foden.
the thing, you see, that's the thing I don't like, because I'm potentially losing. There'll be people who are going to go from, because of the blank, who are going to go from like 3 City down to 1, aren't there?
Yeah.
So a big differential will be to have 3 City in game week 13.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which obviously wildcarders will almost
reserved
certainly
for
have.
wildcarders. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or massive hitters, which could be us. I mean, maybe we do think that that's worth it. Late Rise was again talking about that, wasn't he? Saying if you're going to go from Maddison, crappy fixtures, Zaha, slightly crappier, to Foden, Diaz, and Kulu, say, or Saka.
Well, we'll know more about Brighton by then, I guess. Which if Brighton have been getting smashed 5-0 every game, then definitely worth hits to get there. But if not, then if it was Potter's Brighton, you wouldn't be looking at that fixture and thinking, right, I need 3 City for it, would you? So
True.
Cool. Thank you, mate. It's good to get our heads back into it again after the break, and hopefully there's some useful stuff in there for people.
Yep, agreed. Yep, thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the content, please give it a like, share, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon for another episode. See ya. Bye. Thanks, Nick.
all.